I'm Elaine Marshall, 62, a retired elementary school teacher who waters her begonias before coffee and keeps her word like a promise. On a pale Ohio morning, my phone lit up on the kitchen counter, and Facebook served me a smiling photograph I was never meant to see. My son, Adam, stood in a navy suit beside his fiancée, Lena, under a floral arch tagged #Maplewood Estate. The caption from her cousin read, "Family-only rehearsal. Tomorrow's the day." My name wasn't anywhere. Neither was. Cold went through me the way lake wind slips under a coat. I enlarged the photo until my fingers left prints on the glass. The bouquet in Lena's hands matched the picture she'd sent Adam months ago, the one I'd pretended not to study. Family only. I'm his family. I pressed call. It rang out. I tried again, listening to the hum that used to lull him to sleep when he was a boy, and I would pace our hallway with his feverish head on my shoulder. Voicemail. "Hey, Mom, I'll call you back." He didn't. The kettle clicked. I forgot the tea. Outside, the maple in our yard threw lacework shadows on the patio. I stood there thinking how grief can show up in cheap shoes. No spectacle, just the ache of being left out of your own story. I scrolled the cousin's album, place cards, a cake tasting, a dress hem-pinned by someone who wasn't me. By the time the backyard squirrels started their quarrel, anger had climbed my ribs and found its footing. I typed to Adam. Did I miss a message? 3 dots flickered, then vanished. Another post went up, Lena at a wine bar, laughing with someone just out of frame. Captioned, "Last night, before forever." I studied the edge of a sleeve, a wristwatch that didn't belong to my son. I set the phone down and rinsed a mug that was already clean. If I was being written out, I would read the margins. I reached for my keys and for the person who always tells me the truth first. Marjorie. Marjorie lived just 4 blocks away, in a yellow house with wind chimes that never seemed to rest. She opened the door before I even knocked, as if she'd been expecting the storm in my chest. Her kitchen smelled of cinnamon rolls, sweet and heavy, and she poured coffee into a chipped mug before I said a word. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asked. Her voice had the softness of someone who already knew the answer. I sat down at her table, fingers tight around the mug, and nodded. He didn't invite me. My own son. The words tasted bitter, heavier than the coffee. Marjorie leaned closer, lowering her voice like the walls could gossip. "Elaine, I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but I saw Lena last week. She wasn't with Adam." The room seemed to tilt. "What do you mean?" "At Willow Street Wine Bar. She came in with a man, dark jacket, tall, maybe early 30s. They sat at the corner table. It wasn't business. Elaine. They were too close, touching hands, whispering. I thought it was odd. But now..." Her eyes searched mine for the courage she knew I didn't have yet. I pressed the rim of the mug to my lips, though I couldn't swallow. The image of Adam's fiancée laughing with someone else carved a hollow inside me. Why would Adam keep me away from the wedding unless he was protecting her? Protecting this? Marjorie reached for my hand. "You need to be careful. If you go barging in with just my story, Adam won't believe you. He loves her." The clock ticked between us. I felt my heartbeat in my palms, steady and angry. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed more than suspicion, but the seed had been planted, and I couldn't ignore it. I stood, pushing the chair back. If I'm out, I'll find my way in. Somehow. Back home, I couldn't sit still. The house felt too quiet. Every clock ticked an accusation. I opened my laptop and searched for their registry. Lena had made it private to outsiders, but with Adam's last name typed beside hers, I found fragments cached through a wedding site, copper pans, a crystal decanter, a blender that cost more than my first month's rent in 1983. It wasn't the list that unsettled me. It was the message at the bottom. This registry is visible to guests invited by the bride's family only. I clicked through social media, fingers trembling, eyes straining for any slip. On Instagram, Lena's account overflowed with curated images of dresses, floral arrangements, and tagged vendors. In one picture, a champagne flute lifted high, her arm brushing against a man cropped halfway out of frame. His sleeve was gray wool, not the navy suits Adam favored, and on his wrist was the same steel watch I had glimpsed in that last night before forever photo. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred, as if the screen would confess what Adam couldn't. My heart thudded against my ribs. A mother knows the outlines of her child's life, the rhythms of his body, the way he carries himself in photographs. That man wasn't my son. I scrolled back months, and there it was again. Small details repeated like breadcrumbs. A dinner menu for two, a shadow stretching across her glass, an extra coat slung over a chair, always almost hidden, never acknowledged. I sat back, pressing my palms together. If Marjorie's sighting was just a flicker of gossip, this was something heavier, more deliberate. Still, I had no proof Adam would accept. Love makes men deaf, especially young men standing at the altar. The kettle whistled in the kitchen, but I let it scream. Something inside me was louder. I needed to see for myself. The following Saturday, Marjorie pulled her sedan into my driveway before the morning sun had burned the dew off the grass. She had a thermos of coffee balanced on the dash and a determination I hadn't seen since we were teenagers sneaking into drive-in theaters. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "I can't just sit here and wonder," I said. My voice sounded older than I felt, but steady. We drove the 30 minutes out to Maplewood Estate, the venue Lena had bragged about online. The place was tucked behind rolling hills, a restored barn strung with fairy lights, too perfect to feel honest. We parked on the gravel shoulder, hidden behind a row of tall sycamores, and waited. For a while, nothing moved except groundskeepers dragging chairs and staff carrying crates of glassware. The quiet pressed in. I almost convinced myself this was foolish until a black SUV turned into the lot. Lena stepped out, the train of her rehearsal dress bundled in her arms, her laugh carrying even at that distance. The passenger door opened, and he appeared. The same man from the photos. He leaned close, brushing something off her shoulder, his hand lingering too long. She didn't flinch. She leaned in. Marjorie gripped my arm. "That's him." I couldn't breathe. My throat burned with the kind of truth you wish were a lie. If Adam had been there, I might have shouted across the lot, torn the secret wide open. But only the two of them and the staff moved about, as if nothing were wrong. I pulled out my phone and snapped pictures through the windshield, the camera shaking in my hands. Evidence, not enough to crush a wedding, but enough to keep me from feeling insane. "We have to tell Adam," I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew walking straight to him would never work. He would see me as the intruder, the meddling mother. I needed someone he trusted. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena's hand on that man's arm, casual and practiced, like they had rehearsed it 100 times. The ceiling fan spun slow circles above me, and I thought about who could reach Adam when I couldn't. My mind landed on Tyler Grant, his college roommate. Tyler had always been more than just a buddy from late-night study sessions. He was like a brother Adam chose. I still remembered him at our kitchen table years ago, eating my lasagna as if he hadn't tasted home cooking in months. If anyone could cut through Adam's blind devotion, it was Tyler. I called him the next afternoon. His voice was wary at first, formal, like he expected me to ask for money or deliver bad news. When I told him what I had seen, he went quiet. I could almost hear him sifting through his own memories of Lena, comparing them to mine. "Elaine," he finally said, "Adam won't believe this coming from you. You know that, right? He thinks you've always been tough on her." "I don't need him to believe me," I answered. "I just need him to hear you." We met at a coffee shop near the hospital where Adam worked. Tyler listened again, his eyes narrowing as I showed him the blurry photos from the car. He exhaled hard, rubbing his forehead. "Okay," he said. "If this is true, I'll talk to him. But we need something stronger than shadows in a picture." His words were a challenge, but also an opening. I knew he was right. Adam wouldn't walk away from an engagement because of rumor and grainy photos. I would have to find something undeniable, something that couldn't be explained away as a misunderstanding. I sipped my coffee, bitter and lukewarm, and made a silent vow. I wasn't finished. The wedding weekend arrived with skies the color of tin, heavy with heat. I drove out to Maplewood Estate again, my heart hammering harder than the windshield wipers that pushed away a sudden summer shower. This time, I didn't sit in the car like some spy trembling behind tinted glass. I had a reason, thin as it was, to be closer. A former student of mine worked part-time with the catering crew, and when I spotted him unloading trays by the service entrance, I waved like an old friend. He grinned, hugged me quickly, and slipped me a spare wristband without asking too many questions. Inside, the air smelled of polish and roses. The barn glowed with strings of Edison bulbs. Half the tables still bare. I moved like a shadow along the wall, staying clear of anyone who might recognize me, my pulse clanging in my ears. I told myself I would leave after a few minutes, but fate, or maybe luck, had other plans. Through an open door near the bridal suite, I heard Lena's voice, sharp and hushed. I froze. She wasn't speaking to Adam. A man's voice answered. Lower, impatient. I pressed closer, the wood cool against my cheek. 3 months, Mark, she whispered. After the wedding settles, we'll file the papers. No one will trace it back if you handle the account from Toronto. My knees nearly buckled. This wasn't flirtation anymore. This was a scheme, calculated and cold. I fumbled for my phone, thumb hitting record, praying the microphone caught every syllable. The voices rose, then softened. A kiss audible like the strike of a match. My stomach turned. I had what I needed, yet standing there, I felt both triumphant and broken. My son's life was about to detonate, and I was holding the fuse. I slipped out the back, the recording safe in my pocket, rain still pattering against the gravel as if the sky itself wanted to wash the day clean. I sat in my car with the phone clutched tight, replaying the recording until the words etched themselves into my skull. Every time Lena said 3 months, I felt a fresh jolt, like a nail driven deeper. By the time headlights swept across my windshield, I knew what I had to do. I called Tyler. He answered on the second ring, his voice low, like he was already bracing for whatever I might unload. Elaine, did you find something? I did more than find, I whispered. I recorded her. She's planning something with another man. Money, papers, Toronto, it's all here. My voice cracked, but I didn't let it falter. There was a long pause. Then Tyler said, "Bring it to me. Tonight." We met in the hospital parking lot where Adam was finishing a late shift. The sodium lights cast everything in a harsh orange glow. Tyler listened to the recording, his jaw tightening with every second. When it ended, he blew out a sharp breath and nodded. "Adam has to hear this," he said. My chest tightened. He won't listen if I'm the one pushing it. He'll think I'm jealous or meddling. Then let me talk first, Tyler offered. But you should be there when he hears it. He needs to see your face when the truth lands. I leaned back against the car, the metal cool through my blouse. For years, I had been the one Adam trusted without hesitation. Now I had to rely on someone else to carry my voice. It was a bitter pill. But if that's what it took to save him, I'd swallow it. I closed my eyes and nodded. Tomorrow. Before the ceremony. He needs to know before it's too late. The decision settled like iron in my stomach. There was no turning back. The morning of the wedding broke too bright, the kind of July sun that makes the air shimmer and hides the shadows you most need to see. I drove to Maplewood with my stomach clenched, the recording tucked in my purse like a live wire. Guests in pastel dresses and press suits were already streaming through the gates, laughing, unaware of the storm about to hit. Tyler met me near the parking lot, his tie half knotted, his expression grim. "He's upstairs in the groom's suite," he said. "We don't have much time." Inside, the walls pulsed with music and chatter. I followed Tyler up the narrow stairs, my palms damp against the railing. When we opened the door, Adam stood before a mirror, adjusting his cufflinks. His eyes caught mine in the reflection, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Mom," he said sharply, "you're not supposed to be here." I swallowed hard. I wouldn't be if it wasn't important. He turned, jaw tight. "Please, not today." Tyler stepped forward. "Adam, just listen. That's all we're asking. 10 seconds. I pulled out my phone, pressed play, and Lena's voice spilled into the room. Clear as a bell. 3 months. Mark. After the wedding settles, we'll file the papers. No one will trace it back if you handle the account from Toronto. The words hung heavy, louder than the laughter outside. Adam's face drained of color. He shook his head, as though denial might erase the sound. "No," he muttered. This is edited. You made this up." Tyler met his eyes. "You know I wouldn't stand here if it weren't real." Adam's breath came fast, his hands trembling as he braced against the dresser. I wanted to gather him up like I did when he was small, but all I could do was stand there, waiting for the world he'd built to collapse. The ceremony was minutes away. Music drifted up from the lawn, the first notes of a string quartet threading through the open windows. Adam's face was pale, his tie askew, his breath ragged. For a heartbeat, I thought he might crumple right there on the carpet. But then something hardened in his eyes. He straightened, smoothing his jacket with trembling hands. "I can't let this happen," he whispered. Tyler put a hand on his shoulder. "Then don't." We followed him down the staircase, every step echoing like a drumbeat. Outside, rows of guests rose as Lena appeared at the end of the aisle, her gown glinting in the sunlight. She smiled the way brides do when they believe the world is theirs. Adam stepped forward, blocking her path. The quartet faltered, the notes collapsing into silence. "There won't be a wedding today," Adam said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, slicing through the hush. "This ceremony is over." Gasps rippled across the crowd. Someone dropped a program. It fluttered to the grass. Lena froze, her bouquet clutched tight, color draining from her cheeks. "Adam," she stammered. "What are you—" "Don't!" he cut in. His voice cracked but didn't break. "I know about Mark. I know about Toronto. I know this marriage was never about love." For a long, painful moment, no one moved. The officiant shifted uncomfortably. The bridesmaids exchanged frantic glances. A murmur rose among the guests, disbelief layered with scandal. Lena's mask slipped. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut, words dying on her tongue. She spun, storming back down the aisle, the train of her gown snagging on the grass. The crowd erupted, whispers and questions chasing after her. Adam stood rooted, chest heaving, as if every breath cost him. I wanted to reach out, but I stayed still, letting him claim this moment as his own. He had cut the cord, and there was no stitching it back. After the crowd dispersed in uneasy clusters and the staff began pulling chairs back toward the barn, Adam disappeared. One moment he was beside us. The next he had vanished into the swell of relatives and whispers. Tyler offered to look for him, but I shook my head. My son needed air more than he needed company. The following days were heavy with silence. Adam didn't answer calls or texts. I drove past his apartment twice, seeing the blinds drawn tight, the mailbox stuffed. It felt like waiting for news from a battlefield, not from a man who had once come home every Sunday for pot roast and laughter. Marjorie came by with casseroles I couldn't bring myself to heat. She patted my arm and said, "Give him time. He's grieving more than a wedding. He's grieving the picture he thought was his life." Her words settled over me like a blanket that couldn't quite warm. I replayed the scene of him standing at the altar, voice cracking, tearing down the life he thought he wanted. Pride mixed with sorrow until I couldn't separate them. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed with a single text. "I'm okay. Just need space." Relief made my knees weak. At least he was breathing. At least he was moving through the wreckage. Still, the ache didn't ease. Nights stretched long, filled with memories of him as a boy, running across our yard with skinned knees, standing on a stool to stir cookie dough, beaming when I clapped at his school play. Those images battled the sight of him broken in a suit, too sharp for his age. I lay awake, whispering to the dark. He'll find his way back. I had to believe it. Otherwise, the silence would swallow us both. It was nearly 3 weeks before Adam appeared at my door. The August air was thick and restless, and I had been sitting on the porch with a book I wasn't reading when his car pulled up. He stepped out slowly, shoulders heavier than I remembered, but his eyes clearer. Behind him, the passenger door opened, and a young woman slid out, smoothing her scrubs top with nervous hands. "Mom," Adam said, voice quiet but steady. "This is Rachel. We work together at the hospital." Rachel gave me a tentative smile, the kind that asked permission to belong. I stood, my chest swelling with a mixture of relief and hesitation, and opened the screen door wider. "Come in," I said. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon candles and the pot of stew I'd left simmering. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table that had held birthday cakes, science projects, and late-night talks with Tyler years ago. Rachel folded her hands politely, listening while Adam began to speak. He told me about the therapy sessions, about writing out everything he couldn't say aloud, about the anger that gave way to shame and then to quiet. He admitted he had blamed me at first, hated me even, until the recording played over and over in his head and there was no denying the truth. Rachel reached for his hand, and the gesture was small but firm. An anchor. "He's been through hell," she said gently, "but he's climbing out." I poured bowls of stew, the ladle trembling only a little, the clink of spoons, the soft hum of conversation. It was ordinary, but it was everything. My son sat at my table again, not whole yet, but free from the web that had nearly strangled him, for the first time in weeks. I exhaled without fear. When the house quieted that night, after Rachel and Adam had gone, I sat alone at the kitchen table with only the hum of the refrigerator for company. The day had ended not with champagne or speeches, but with bowls of stew and quiet conversation, and somehow that felt richer than any celebration I could have imagined. I thought back to the moment I first saw the wedding photo on Facebook, the hollow ache of being erased from my own son's life. That ache had carried me into shadows, to stakeouts in parked cars, to the sharp edge of secrets I never wanted to uncover. It had broken something in both of us, but maybe it had also saved him. The truth was cruel, but it was clean. Lies rot from the inside, and if Adam had gone through with that marriage, his future would have been nothing but decay dressed in flowers. I hadn't stormed the altar with rage or revenge. I had placed the truth in his hands and let him choose. That choice was his alone, and though it left scars, it also set him free. I am not naive. I know Rachel might not be permanent. Love at 28 is still tender, still uncertain, but she looked at my son with kindness, not calculation, and that is a beginning. More than that. Adam looked back without fear. As I rinsed the bowls and set them on the rack, I whispered a prayer, not for a fairy tale ending, but for resilience, for honesty, for the kind of love that doesn't require hiding. Sometimes being pushed out of the picture gives you the clearest view of what's real. I had been uninvited, yes, but perhaps that rejection was the very reason Adam could finally reclaim his life. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.